Ukraine's $400,000 drone swarm destroys Russia's $1.2 billion jam-proof drone nerve center. Today, Ukraine delivers a precision strike that obliterates one of Russia's most heavily protected industrial assets, inflicting nearly $1.2 billion in damage while spending only a fraction of that cost. What begins as a silent glide through Arctic winds becomes a contest between low-visibility drones and one of Russia's most advanced air defense networks. The entire mission depends on sacrifice, stealth, and timing, measured in heartbeats. By the end, Ukraine not only destroys a critical facility, but also blinds a Russian defense network designed to secure future dominance. To understand how this turning point unfolded, the story must return to the very beginning. At 2:13 a.m., the frozen stillness over Mordovia fractures as bursts of 30 mm autocannon fire rip across the sky. 11 Ukrainian drones descend directly into the muzzle flash of a Russian Pantsir S-2. Only 48 hours earlier, Moscow had rejected a negotiated peace proposal. Kiev answers not with words, but with a strike traveling at 118 miles per hour, engineered to decide whether Russia's monopoly on fiber-optic drone warfare survives the night. If the drones fail, Russia maintains its edge. If they succeed, the visual nerve center of Russia's drone fleet goes dark for years. Margin for error, 0. Time to impact, 9 seconds. 7 minutes before that moment, a 155-pound Shadow glided just 800 feet above the frozen plains. This was Ukraine's FP-1 mother drone, cruising at 115 miles per hour, its electric motors purring at exactly 17% power. At 18%, its thermal signature would brighten enough for Russian sensors to detect it, so it remained on that narrow digital tightrope, skimming only 130 feet above the terrain. Inside a Kyiv bunker, Colonel Oleksiy monitored the formation on his tactical display. A massive red overlay dominated the screen, the kill zone of Russia's Nebo-M radar, a system capable of tracking 300 targets across hundreds of miles. Nested inside that ring was the lethal engagement circle of the Pantsir S-2. At the center of both stood the Fiber-Optic systems plant, the only facility in Russia capable of producing components for jam-proof drones. For 400 miles, the Ukrainian formation had used weather as camouflage. Riding a low-level jet stream with 60 mph tailwinds, the drones appeared to Russian radar operators in Saransk as nothing more than drifting snow. Oleksiy assessed that Russian operators still interpreted the formation as weather. But the physics of war were about to shift. At 10 degrees Fahrenheit, the Arctic cold kept motor temperatures low. Yet, as the drones began their descent, they had to increase throttle. Hot lithium batteries against a freezing background glow brightly on thermal imaging, perfect targets for a system designed to hunt heat. At the Saransk radar station, the Nebo-M operator poured his third cup of coffee, unaware that the snowstorm on his monitor would soon bank left, accelerate to 125 miles per hour, and attempt to pierce a billion-dollar air defense network. The countdown fell to 6 minutes. The wind died, the cover vanished, and the hunt began. 60 miles from the target, the jet stream had shifted. To maintain the schedule, the FP-1 mother drones were forced to throttle up the moment their ground speed exceeded the wind vector by 5 knots. The Nebo-M stripped away its weather classification. The operator's screen bloomed crimson. The console flagged an anomaly at bearing 211, with speed increasing. A new race began. Ukrainian drones moving at 100 knots against alert orders, rushing through old copper telephone lines toward the factory's defenders. The swarm crossed the next 53 miles in 28 minutes. Every second drew them closer to the Pantsir's lethal envelope. At 7 miles from the target, the Russian air defense network finally reached full alert, but it was 30 seconds too slow. The first 5 FP-1 mother drones climbed to 2,000 feet, opened their belly hatches, and released 20 Wild Hornet drones, fast, aggressive, and expendable. The 6th FP-1 released 4 Calibri drones, carrying precision laser-link communication terminals, the only systems capable of cutting through the jamming Russia was about to unleash. Relieved of their payloads, the FP-1S banked away and raced home. Their job was complete. What remained would enter the grinder. The 20 Wild Hornets scattered like a burst of shrapnel across the sky. Their onboard AI engaged the stop-and-go maneuver protocol. Meanwhile, the Pantsir S-2's radar shrieked. The The system relied on Doppler prediction, estimating where a target would be 4 seconds ahead. But the Hornets sprinted at 90 miles per hour, hovered, darted left, hovered, darted right, hovered again, dropping their radial velocity to 0 each time and vanishing into the clutter of frozen trees. Inside the Russian command vehicle, tracking symbols flickered erratically. The fire control system reported a failed trajectory prediction and unstable radar lock. The Russian gunner ignored the malfunctioning radar and switched to the 10ES-1 thermal sensor. This was the pivot Ukraine feared. At 12°C, the Hornet's 120 degrees Fahrenheit batteries glowed like white flares against a dark canvas. The gunner reported visual contact. The twin-2 A38M30mm cannons spun up. Capable of firing 5,000 rounds per minute, 83 per second, they transformed into a torrent of tungsten and explosives. The first burst shredded 3 Hornets instantly. Sparks and carbon fiber rained downward. The fourth drone attempted a steep dive, but a single 30mm shell, moving at 3,200 feet per second, sheared off a rotor arm. The drone spun into the frozen ground. The 5th and 6th Hornets tried to flank but were torn apart by proximity-fused bursts. Within 18 seconds of opening fire, 9 Wild Hornets were gone. Then, the danger escalated. The gunner swung toward the 4 slower calibre drones, the heart of the mission. Ukraine had 38 seconds left. The gunner made one fatal mistake. He became greedy. He ignored the 11 surviving Hornets that appeared to flee, but were actually repositioning. Inside the swarm's neural logic, a decision flipped from evade to execute. The Hornets stopped their erratic dance. They synchronized and dove towards the Pantsir's glass jaw, the unarmored optics module sitting atop the turret. The first Hornet died instantly. The second clipped the radar dish and spun away. Drones 3, 4, and 5 hit their mark. 3 shaped charges detonated, just a surgical concussive burst that shattered lenses, melted boards, and ripped the thermal eye from its housing. The gunner reported that the system had gone blind. The Pantsir turret thrashed aimlessly, firing into nothing. The once fearsome machine became a blind metal shell. 5 Hornets had died for this moment. 6 remained, and they rose. Above them, the Calibri drones stabilized, releasing small pods emitting 1,550 nanometer laser beams. This was free space optical communication, a technology immune to jamming. Even the powerful Krasuka 4 electronic warfare station, blasting the spectrum with noise, could not disrupt a laser beam thinner than a needle. In Kyiv, Oleksiy watched the "Connection Lost" banner fade to green. The interface indicated that the link had been established. Data streamed at 2 Gbps with 4 ms latency. A 4K image of the factory rooftop appeared, crisp and silent. Here, for the first time, the full economic dimension of the strike became clear. Ukraine had launched a swarm that cost roughly $400K in airframes and munitions. Yet the target below, a sprawling 4-acre facility producing silica fiber for jam-proof drones, held equipment worth nearly $1.2 billion. The cost-to-damage ratio ranked among the most lopsided of the entire war. The Calibri drones acted as routers, relaying encrypted instructions to the 6 surviving Hornets. Intelligence had mapped the critical nodes. Not administrative offices, not warehouses. The heart of the facility, the silica draw towers, 3-story ovens operating at 3,600 degrees Fahrenheit. These machines demanded constant cooling. Without it, molten glass would harden, permanently destroying the system. Oleksiy issued the command. Team Alpha, 3 Hornets, would strike the 110 kilovolt substation, cutting all power. The Calibris and the remaining Hornets would target the draw towers directly. The swarm descended. The Pantsir crew heard only the rising hum. In a final burst of desperation, the Russian commander climbed out of the disabled vehicle into the freezing air. He shouldered an Igla manpads, lacking any lock tone, and fired blindly into the night. The missile streaked upward, missing the Calibris by 50 feet, but producing a shockwave that sent 1 Hornet tumbling. It crashed harmlessly into the parking lot. 9 drones remained. Team Alpha struck first. 3 Hornets slammed into the substation. Transformers erupted, spraying boiling oil and ceramic shrapnel. A massive blue arc snapped across the yard. The entire factory went dark. Cooling pumps died instantly. Inside the draw towers, molten glass began to spike in temperature, pressure rising. The two remaining Wild Hornets, the breach team, dived at 120 miles per hour. Their shaped charges blasted molten holes through the steel roof. Smoke and debris spiraled upward. The Calibri drones threaded the openings with precision, their cameras revealing the red glowing interior. 4 thermobaric warheads detonated. A 4000-degree fireball consumed the oxygen. Hydrogen tanks erupted, blowing the roof off as if peeled by a massive hand. The silica towers did not merely break, they collapsed into fused slag. One by one, the drone feeds dissolved into static as the final charges completed their mission. By 2:20 a.m., silence reclaimed Mordovia. This time it was the silence of a graveyard. Ukraine had spent about $400,000. Russia had lost nearly $1.2 billion in industrial capacity. Yet the financial impact was secondary. The silica draw towers were custom built and irreplaceable in the short term. Reconstruction would take 14 to 18 months. Until then, Russia's Geran drone modernization program, intended to flood the battlefield with jam-proof fiber-optic drones, was effectively dead. The question now facing Russian commanders is simple, yet consequential. Do they pull their air defenses back to protect what remains of their industry, or do they hold the line and risk losing the rest? Share your thoughts below.